Tell us a little bit about life, family, even before we get to the ministry stuff.
Sure, wonderful. Yes, I was born and raised in São Paulo, Brazil, and in the 80s. My wife and I, we met at university. We first studied business school, first had a degree in business, but I had felt a calling toward ministry in my teenage years. I had a kind of, at the same time, a very good youth group, very good Christian camps I went to, but also a crisis of faith at the same time because I had a professor of philosophy in high school who had lost his faith back in the day. And so he wanted to help me lose my faith too, right? And so he launched questions, objections, and then pretty much demolished my faith during class. But for me, it was a precious time in God's providence because it made me return to the books, to the Bible, discover apologetics, try to answer him. And then out of that came my sense of calling as well. First, we studied in Canada. We studied theology at Regent College in Vancouver, 3 years, married by then. And then we moved to Italy, Rome, 14 years ago, in 2010.
Right.
So we've been there for 14 years.
Great. So that crisis of faith, how long was that season?
About a year and a half, between 15, 16, that season. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And was there something, obviously you said the books and the Bible, was there anything in particular that was helpful?
Discovering apologetics, which is very helpful, but also going back to the Bible with those questions, with those objections the professor had. And trying to look at the Bible through new lens, because before it was an inherited faith, a faith I had received from my parents and from my church, which was very precious. But it had to be tested against the world, right? And so I remember for him, he had received a lot of, then I realized what it was from Bultmann. So it was very demythologizing project of the Bible, of the New Testament, right? So he said, for example, that the multiplication of the bread and fish wasn't really miraculous. It was just like people bringing their lunches with them and then sharing, and the miracle was sharing of sandwiches among the crowd, right? And so going back to the Bible and saying, hold on, this does not hold to where they were, and the way, just it didn't hold the theory. And so be able to look back at it fresh and feel, oh, hold on, I can answer him. And the Bible is more solid, even when tested against those questions, than I had thought before. So that was precious.
Yeah. So you met Sarah.
Yep.
You got married, then went to Regent.
Yes.
Okay. So we're not going to kind of divert into a whole hour talking about marriage. But,
yeah.
But marriage is a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you feel you've grown both as an individual through the marriage, but also as a couple over the years?
Yeah, good question. I think it's one of the main schools of life we have, right? At home, like living with somebody, going through different phases of life in terms of dating, then married, then kids, then moving to a new country, then children and church. So I think we go through different phases, and it's special. It's a place where we have to really live the gospel. Otherwise, it's easier to live at church, right? To preach, etc. Then home, it's different. And so it's where we have to really practice grace to each other, listening to each other, love in practice. The fruit of the Spirit is where it's easier outside at the home, maybe lose patience and things, right? And so I think it really makes you grow. In the beginning, I was very hurried as a young man. And I was maybe a workaholic, I wanted to get things done for God, etc. And I felt that marriage and then kids hold me back, it took a lot of my time. But then I realized it was God's providence to make me grow up and make me do what I do better from a more centered perspective, more mature perspective, doing together and be able to also bless and give space to each other. For example, I maybe do less than I would have done otherwise, but also give space for Sarah and vice versa. And that blesses each other, and we are richer. Our ministers are richer together.
Have you found anything that over the years you've learned that's helpful in terms of making sure you have the connection and the time together? And
yes.
Any specific kind of habits you've got into?
Yeah, we try to schedule specific moments. For us as a family, it's been very important. It was something Sarah had from her family, and we kind of adopted it. Our Sabbath, Saturday, we did really off. We try as much as we can to not have any ministry commitment. So we do go to the park, go to the restaurant. When the kids were small, we took them to a playground. Now we rent bikes and do a bike ride in Rome. Just to have a clear family day, that's very, very good. And the church learned to embrace that, to appreciate that, to be happy for it. And so we schedule events mostly in other days. So that's good. Right. And then catching up like walks or dinners. And,
right.
Yeah.
Great. And you have 2 children?
2 children who are now, 2 boys are now ages 12 and 14. So the first one came to Rome with us when he was 2 months old. And the second one was born there. Yeah.
Does he feel Italian or Brazilian?
They feel mostly Italian. Yeah. We try to convey the Brazilian identity, and it helps when the World Cup comes.
Right.
And so the Italian team didn't qualify for, I think, the last 2 World Cups, right? So we said, okay, we have Brazil, so let's cheer for Brazil.
Yeah. Usually that doesn't go too badly, right?
Yes. Yeah. Last times haven't been that good, but at least they get a sense of pride from the parents.
Yeah. If there's any Germans here, they might mention.
Yeah. That was tragic.
Yeah. So, your ministry in Rome, you've started a church. Is that kind of the main focus?
My ministry, yes.
Yeah.
We moved there. We moved to Rome's university neighborhood. So lots of young people, graffiti, and even drugs and stuff, like that kind of stuff. But we wanted to move there. Sarah works with university students. First, she did local work in the universities of Rome. Now she leads a movement of young people called Revive. Has a conference and different events. And my vision was to plant a church right there in Rome's university neighborhood, reach a new generation, and out of that, help new ministries launch, new churches start. So we started a daughter church later in Perugia, a few years later, and now we're working on in a city to the south of Rome, and try to. That's my main ministry.
Okay, so the church that you started is planting others, but
yes,
you're still in the
yes.
I
I wouldn't see myself like there are people who do that, and Paul who like goes place to place. Yeah. I feel more called to stay in one place and then try to raise others and bless others and as they plant other churches.
So how's that gone? Tell us a little bit of that story of the church.
Yes, it was. It went through stages as well. The first one, it was beautiful. It was a lot of work. We almost burned out, but it was amazing. It was in terms of just giving ourselves to people, having people over, dinner, like that sense of tiredness I mentioned, in terms of people coming ministry nights, the kids would wake up during the nights. It was very genuine love for people and for the Lord. And the people came, many people got saved, the community formed. It was so joyous, and it was amazing. But it came to a point in which we were almost burning out. So we had to kind of take a step back, put more boundaries, like respecting our Saturdays, or when our kids were small, we used their school day as boundaries. So we tried to work until 4, be with them like in the park, bath, dinner, those kind of stuff. And then if we did a ministry event in the evening, would be when they were already asleep. So people would come for dinner, for a Bible study, and try to work with that. So that helped a lot. That also gave us a little bit of a change in the congregation. They felt it, in which some people felt we weren't as close as involved with everybody as before, and we had to deal with those feelings, which were valid on one sense. Other people expressed it in immature ways, and had to explain, etc. And then later, Sarah was very hands-on in the beginning, and later she felt called mostly to ministries elsewhere. So also raising new leaders, new people, team who serves alongside me. So that happened as well. And then by the time it was 2017, 18, 19, we were like a very good place in terms of making those changes. The church was flourishing, was growing, people coming to Christ. In the pandemic, the first year was I'm so sorry for the pandemic, but in terms of as a church, it was so beautiful in terms of people rallying, doing online ministry, started doing 3 services instead of 1 to make sure everybody could come and do online ministry. So it was very nice, very compelling. The second year was our hardest, in which the sense of tiredness and trauma of the pandemic sunk in. And some people took poorly the fact that we were doing socially distanced ministry and online ministry. Like we're not a united community we were at first, right? They feel that kind of sense of connection. And so some left in a bad way, and that was very hurtful. But we learned lessons from that, right? It was inevitable because of the season. We could have done a few things differently, but we also learned from that. And now we are in a very pleasant and joyous face. It's kind of, you grow over time and you can do things with less effort, with more joy, more friendships among the team and among people. And now we're working with this church plant. So it's a very sweet phase right now.
That's great. So you said that's in the university district. So in terms of the experience of church, if somebody comes in, how do you make it accessible? How do you make it something that they don't feel like, what's this?
Yes.
Because it's obviously foreign to Italian students.
Yes,
right?
yes. It's a key question. Because here in Rome, the reference point, most people have rejected in their secular, but the reference point is the Roman Catholic Church, right? And so we meet in a theater now. And so for them, it's not a church building. So it's like, whoa, what's that, right? But we try to have the service in a way in which one is very welcoming. We have a welcome team at the door. I greet them by name. Everybody in the service, like, we have a moment during the service in which, there's Sam for the first time. There's this other person from the first time, welcome, and they're very appreciative of that. But we also include elements of not more traditional liturgy, but elements of the liturgy that makes people recognize this is a church. So I come from a low church, contemporary worship kind of church. There, we started celebrating the Lord's Supper every Sunday because I think theologically it's important. We can, and it's wonderful to celebrate it every Sunday, but also because it's the key part of the Mass, right? The Eucharist. And it makes people say, this is a church, they're celebrating better than supper, and we do it after the sermon, and they understand why the bread, why the wine. So it's very moving to them. Though some other elements I wanted to do in the beginning, like prayer and response and reciting the creeds, the Italians didn't want that. The ones who became evangelical Christians don't want to do much, have much with some things that remind them of the Catholic Church. So I said, okay. I remember once when we are preaching on the Lord's Supper, and I said, let's do it different this time. Let's have people come forward, and I'll say, like, this is the bread of Christ broken for you, the blood of Christ shed for you. And then people, no, I'm not going to. My worship leader said, I'm not going there, sorry, it's too similar. I said, okay, so we don't have to do that. And so we try to mix some very contemporary and relevant elements with some more traditional church elements. Yeah. And I think it's a good combination which people think, it's Christian, it's a church, but it's very different, very compelling for me.
So for the people that aren't used to it, you're kind of reflecting something that they're familiar with.
Yes.
And for the people that come from that background but are now strongly evangelical, you've got to be careful.
Yes, as well.
Strange balance.
Yes, it is. You got to work the balance.
So you're thinking about the whole event.
Yes.
From their perspective.
Yes, we do. We try to very much. And also, for example, the length of our service. The Mass is like an hour, sometimes not even less, right? So we try to do about an hour 15, an hour 20, 25 tops. We could have gone longer, like for the believers, and they might want that, more worship and things. But we try not to go too long because it is the reference point in the culture. And I think it's a bit longer than usual, what they are accustomed to, and works. They can receive that.
And within the sermon, when you're preaching, how are you conscious of kind of a mixed group? You've got people that are Christian and been in the church for a while. You've got potentially first-timers.
Yes.
How do you try to handle that?
Yeah, we try to. It's one of the key things of our vision was to try to be aware of that, and to have a service that would be edifying for believers, but also relevant for non-Christians. And so in the beginning, it was mostly Sarah and I inviting people, trying to build a culture, being welcoming. But now the congregation absorbed it, and then they're very. I think the people are most struck about how they feel welcomed and loved when they come. And we try with our own language to explain, like, I don't know, like Prophet Isaiah said, like there are people who won't know who Prophet Isaiah is, right? And so to have a sense of explaining the terms and the jargon and the theology in a way that is accessible for people. So it now happens that it becomes like a welcoming, inviting community, and almost every Sunday there's someone new. It doesn't mean that they'll stay and they'll be part of the church, but we usually have greet people who are there for the first time and checking out, or maybe are from out of town or visiting Rome and want to go to church. Yeah.
Do you ever find that you sort of accidentally slip back into Christian language?
It can happen.
I
Yes.
do that.
Yes.
My wife will say,
yes,
that doesn't communicate.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's
yes, right. Yes, I do. It's always a temptation, right?
Yeah.
And it's a temptation, but I try as much as I can to resist it, and to bring some counterpoints. Like I did, for example, yesterday with the secular songs, right? We could have just gone through Revelation, gone through the chapters, but I think just the counterpoint, the secular counterpoint, makes things fresh. And it's also an entry point for a non-believer. Say, oh, I know that song, and they can have some reference points for what they see in the Bible, which is very different throne scene to what we have here in our culture. So make that happen.
I probably grew up in a similar situation to you. I'm not sure, but with a very separated ministry.
Yeah.
So that time is the evangelistic gospel service, and this is the teaching for believers.
Yes.
And when we started our church, we said, no, we're going to have one sermon and it's for both. And you've done the same thing.
Yeah.
Apart from language, is there anything else that you kind of consciously think about when you're trying to hit essentially two goals at the same time?
Yes. Language, emotionality, how much we express of our emotions. It's a kind of free, like people who are more introverted and quiet, people are more expressive, though we have wrestled a bit with how expressive we could be, right? Culturally, emotionally, how praying out loud. For example, let me give you an example. There was we have a moment in the service after the sermon in which people can, for example, pray out loud, short prayers, and sometimes there was an older gentleman. I love him, but he used to pray like screaming, right? Like, whoa, like even the Christians were like, ooh, like, and Mila, my co-pastor, and I went to him one day, like, sorry, sir, like, we have non-Christians here. Let's, would you mind like praying a different way? And he kind of understood it, but we had to sometimes, or we do prayer evenings during the week, and they would say like the Christians, like, go ahead, you can dance, you can pray, and do what you want. But in the service, let's be a little bit more, and not as expressive as I would have wanted to be, right? And try to wrestle with that as well.
So as an English person, I've lived in Italy, but pretend I haven't. As an English, shy, introverted person, if I think Italians and Brazilians...
Yeah.
Right, those are both very high on the scale of energy, right?
Yes.
Are they the same, or how does that work? Do you feel
it can be different. It can be different. For example, in Brazil, preachers often shout, scream. It's received as passion. Like I can even raise my voice like that, but it's just like almost shouting the whole time. And in Italy, that wouldn't work. That is, and in Brazil, people, when you go to preach, oh, you're so calm, and it's nice to hear. But for example, like we try to be mindful of a few things, or the way people greet, even for example, beyond the service, the use of the table and food is very important to Italy. It was something which I had to learn. Hospitality is very important. And even culturally, like how time is lived out. We realized, for example, we went to dinner at someone's house, for example. And for Sarah and I, coming from São Paulo, a big city, that would be an appointment kind of an hour 45, maybe 2 hours. And that's enough because the person has to work the next day, you'll be respectful of their time, and etc. But for the Italians, that was too short. For them, it was 3 hours and a half, 4 hours. That's a good meeting up until like 11 p.m., 12, that's good, we're together, right? And so we would stand up to leave, and they're like, really? Oh, I have to schedule the day another time. And we would leave the place feeling, oh, they're not grateful, we came all the way here. And then until we understood the length of time and how people express themselves, we had to be mindful of those little things. And even between Brazil and Italy.
Yeah, so the Italians are very... lots of hand motion, lots of energy when they're in the bar talking about football.
Yeah.
But if you shout at them,
yes,
they don't take that as passion.
No. Especially, I don't know, coming from church. They would if they're Christians, long-time Christians who are used to that. Yeah. I have received pushback from some long-time Christians who said, a nice guy from Naples. He said, Rene, you're too nice. You're too gentle. Sometimes I have to slap us in the face, like that sermon, like you. It's not my style. But also he comes from a church in Naples who does that, right? And I'm thinking, like, we're in Rome. It's a bit different, the culture. And we try to reach non-Christians as well. So not just a service for Christians.
I've found when I've been in Italian churches and I've heard preaching, and it's always struck me that for such a kind of passionate type of culture from an English perspective, often the preachers just kind of give information. They just, it's like they've studied, they've read the commentaries, and then it all comes out for quite a long time. And I'm like, that's really dull.
Yes.
Is that something you've kind of spotted, that there's a sort of almost a contradiction?
Yes, because the way that the school system works is a lot about learning information, learning data, and memorizing facts. Even for our own kids, like we see them doing that, and we see him memorizing a lot of things and can repeat it like a verbatim. And we try to say, like, try to understand the concepts and explain it with your own words. But the system kind of works through that. So it's mostly about information and having a more concept of preaching as transformation, which engages also the heart, the emotions, the will. It's more like many are not used to that or haven't received the training for that. And so, they can happen. So
when you're thinking about a sermon for Sunday, you're thinking, what are your goals? Like, what's your kind of, this is what I hope to achieve?
Yeah. I think the chief one will be an encounter with Christ, in which people would move from a topic, but also be moved in their hearts, informing their minds, and be wanting to be there, encounter God. Not just like we learn about God, but we're there, and when we come to the end of the service and we come to Christ and to the supper, that we really, I'm there and I'm meeting Him. I would say that. I would say my main goal. And then for different series and different sermons, then trying to touch different things in terms of Old Testament, New Testament, a more evangelistic series, a more discipleship series, and different smaller goals within that.
And if you're doing a discipleship series, but you're still conscious of people that are not Christians, so how do you do that? Is it just a comment or? Yes,
sometimes it's a comment or the way we're phrasing the sermon. Like we've just finished, we did a 4-month series on the book of Romans. And it was well received, the Christians loved it, but we had to be mindful of what we were doing. And for example, something I did was, when we were in chapters 2 and 3, I think, I contrasted the community of the just, where we don't recognize our sins, and have this exterior righteousness, with a community of those who are sinners saved by grace. And then contrasting them several points, and how here we don't admit sin, here we do admit and confess it. And here we seem outwardly more holy, but actually we hide our sin under service, and here we bring it out. So a number of things in which it helped the gospel come alive, and people say like a kind of dead religion, or religion which is stifles and makes us proud and hard, and one which is breaks us with the gospel and builds us anew with grace, right? And just trying to make that happen, I think it helps.
So you'll do some series that, in your mind, are more deliberately evangelistic or more deliberately discipling.
Yes.
But you know the audience is the same.
Yes.
And so from their perspective, would they know that, or would they just hopefully respond?
Yeah, hopefully respond, not explicitly. Yeah. Now, so we did Romans. Now we're doing a series called Faith in Modernity, in which I talked about technology and how technology is taking the place of the Holy Spirit in our lives in terms of our daily connection, sense of connection. Or there was a sermon this past Sunday, a couple shared a testimony about he was addicted to pornography, and it really hurt his wife, and she had to go through a journey of forgiveness, and so a very modern problem. And then we talk about relations, so different things in which to try to both the ancient world of the Bible and to today's world.
Do you sometimes speak in other settings that are purely evangelistic? So sort of a kind of more what Sarah's involved in?
Yeah.
Sort of thing?
At times I do. Yeah. Sometimes we do events or in some other settings, and there sometimes we even try to convey like like Paul, like in his sermons in Acts, right? So in the synagogue, it's very explicit. He quotes the scripture. Sometimes he just passes on the concepts to the Athenians or to the Lystra and Derbe, the Galatians, just like concepts like God, sovereignty, resurrection, church, even with different kinds of language, and trying to work touch points like contemporary songs or movie scenes or concepts or thinkers, and try to work through that.
So you'll be much more targeted.
Yes.
And which do you find it easier? I mean, this is a silly question in a sense, but a kind of a one-off special event or the weekly preaching to your own congregation? Which way do you feel?
Yeah. We try to think of an ecosystem in which there are single events, but we try to see them as a stepping stones for people to take the next step forward, right? Sometimes inviting someone to Sunday, it's a big step for someone and people not ready to be invited to church. And so we try to do some, we call aperitivo evenings, in which you have some live music, maybe some artistic thing, maybe an interview or a talk, or maybe not, and or picnics, different kinds of events. And then we do also, then we try to take a person into a journey. We do a secret Bible study. Sarah and I still lead that. And people come for a semester for 2 or 3 months. And we go to the basic stories in the Gospels, like Nicodemus, the prodigal son, the Samaritan woman. And having them come, we come eat pizza. And we have a discussion around the passage and help them discover the passage and study for themselves. And that's the main step. For people to come, be part of the group, and receive the gospel there. And when we feel they're ready, then we invite them for dinner or meet them individually. And then see if they're ready, present the gospel again, and invite them to receive Christ and pray with us. And then often I think produces decisions that are more reasoned and processed, rather than maybe just an altar call on the service and you don't know where they're at, or they'll follow up, right? So we try to do that.
How do you handle that in the service? Do you do altar calls?
We usually don't.
Invite response in some way, or?
Yeah, sometimes, though often not. Often not. I try to have different applications at the end for people who believe, people who don't. For example, phrasing things like, maybe you're here, but you're not sure yet what you believe, like you're thinking about it, and if that's the case, I suggest you do this. And for those of us who know that Jesus is our Savior, like, why don't you do that? And they have different applications for different groups of people.
And how do you handle, if you're doing communion in a kind of a mixed setting, how do you handle that? Because with sort of Catholic background, there's that tendency to, I participate.
Yes.
Because it's just a thing.
Yes.
How, do you present that in a certain way, or?
Yeah, we try to do, like, respectfully have language in which we mention, like, if you're not sure of what you believe or the Christian faith is not yours yet, feel free to use this moment as a moment of reflection. For those of us who do, who have Jesus as our Lord and Savior, you're welcome to stand up and take the. So we do say that every time, though we don't block people.
Right.
If we're not sure where they're at and they stand up, we say it's between them and God, and hopefully there will be like a step towards God somehow in His providence.
Right. Thinking about your preaching, you've mentioned some series. How do you plan, or how far ahead do you plan, and how do you decide where to go in the Bible?
Yeah, that's I think that helps, right? I try to, in the course of the year, have series that touch different places of the Old and New Testament, different genres, mostly expository, but also some topical things. Think of the needs of the congregation at the moment, and for Christians and non-Christians. And so we try to weave that out. And I think it's helpful to think about in maybe 6 to 9 months, more or less, have a general sense of the series we're doing. And also helps because if I think about what we're going to preach on that Sunday, it's too short of preparation time, right? So it's helpful to know, like, I don't know, in 6 weeks' time, I'll be preaching on Romans 11. So things I might come across or start thinking of that. When you come to that week, you already a number of things popping in your head, you're written down, or articles you found, or illustrations you found. And when you come there, sometimes I already have a file and a page with things there. So it helps when you go to the past, then you have more. So it helps kind of to know where you're going. And also to be flexible. Sometimes like a sermon has to address something more specifically. but often we trust that our planning, hopefully under the guidance of the Spirit, will touch the needs of the congregation and of people who are there.
Mm-hmm. And what's your ideal series length? Because it's not a hard and fast thing. I've got a preference which I've expressed. Other people have a preference which they express. Yeah. What's your? Yeah. Do you mix it up or is it fairly consistent?
Yeah, we usually do around 6 weeks, 8 weeks, kinda. This one on Romans was longer, was 14. But I saw that people responded to it, 14 weeks, right? People responded to it, and it was nice. But sometimes we try to do a month and a half, 2 months, kind of each series.
Why? Is there a reason for that?
I think it would be kind of the length of people's attention. We could go deeper and spend more time in each book, each passage, though I often feel that we would, but then we would miss what maybe Scripture is saying elsewhere. And also how people are sometimes at our church for 6 months or a year if they're studying in Rome or working there. And so to do a very long series, I think it can be done. Yeah. But it will be more geared towards the Christians and people who are arriving there don't have much concept. If you spend a lot of time, I don't know, in Isaiah, then people maybe could be better served in different portions of Scripture.
Yeah, makes sense. What's your talk us through your preparation process when you're like you said, Romans 11's coming in 6 weeks. Yeah. I'm keeping anything I can think of. But once you come to, all right, this is the week, or this is the period of time where I'm preparing, what's the process that you follow?
In the beginning, I was very commentary dependent. But I realized that over time, the main thing is just time with the text. It's just with the text itself. Of course, the commentaries, then you look at it later, and they can complement, they can clarify, then they can enrich. But I think the main thing is the passage. So I try to spend time there and reading the passages a few times before as I are going there, not just in that week, but also like a month before. Or you get different things, your mind is at different places, so it enriches, right? And then I spend time with the passage. I do some formal outline for myself. In terms, I try to get the key points there or the key parts of the story and plot it out. And then maybe one day, and maybe even I try to do that in the week before. So the mind marinates over the weekends. You get a sense, oh, no, the passage was really about that. You kind of go deeper. And then when you come to sit and write the sermon, at least in the case I write them, then it's more like cooked, right? And then I write the manuscript from that base. So trying to go there, touching different moments, and trying to reach them in different moments, and then write the sermon. And then when I write them, I do two things. First, I send out to someone in Italian to correct it. Now there are a few mistakes, but still I do come from the outside, and I don't want to have grammatical mistakes, so that helps. And then I practice my manuscripts. I try to do at least 5 times each. And so that makes them more spoken, more alive. And also I write, I cross things, I add things. So I feel that still 20% are done while I practice them and get them ready for Sunday in that way.
Do you preach with the manuscript?
I do. Everything is there. Yeah, I do.
And so in that kind of process, when do you have a point in time where you want to be writing the sermon or starting the 5 run-throughs, or what's your kind of...
Yes, I usually try to do it the week before or the beginning of the week when I'm preaching. So I send it out for the sermon, they give the sermon back to me, and then I have some afternoons in which I can practice at different points the sermon. So I try to finish by Tuesday, maybe maximum Wednesday, or tops Thursday, so we can receive, practice it, and then have a rest day for the family in which I don't touch the sermon. My mind doesn't go there, it's really rest. Then I pick it up again on Sunday morning, practice it a final time, and then I'm church.
And when you practice it, are you on your own, or do you make Sarah sit and listen to you 5 times?
Oh, no, I'm by myself. I'm by myself. Yeah. I know there it's kind of even embarrassing, right? Even if people are gonna listen to it later, I'd rather practice by myself. Yeah.
And so you say you're still changing it while you're practicing.
Yes.
Is that because it's becoming clearer, or you're thinking, oh, that doesn't work? Or
yes, some things become clearer. Sometimes you spend too much time on a point or a sub-point, and it might be valuable, but it's better to cross that out and focus on the main things. Or sometimes things that you write down, but when you speak it out loud, you feel, no, I have to change this. For example, let me something that just happened. When I mentioned about the healing of the nations this morning, right? And I mentioned that in our church I had an Iranian greeting an Ukrainian, Israelite, and an Ukrainian with a Russian. I was kind of unsure about that moment, about how it would be for the Ukrainians who are here to receive that, right? And that was later, just before I was having here, and she said, like, for us, it's hard for us to receive because they're coming, raping, and even, I know this, if someone from another country, like even the Pope says about Christians living in peace, okay? But you're not there, like, being slaughtered right now, right? And I was unsure about the line, and when you maybe I could have crossed it or phrased it some other way, for sensitivity for them, right? But I left it. But sometimes just speaking, it helps. Like just like some things you change, you cross it out, or even you add. The sermon becomes more spoken. For example, the story about the tabernacle, I just added yesterday. I just wrote it yesterday. Like it wasn't planned of it. I thought it would be fun, like a fun moment in the beginning, in the middle of the sermon. And this idea comes as you practice. Yeah.
Do you have more confessions to share with us?
I would.
The ministry of trespassing.
Yes. Yeah.
So there is something different, isn't there, between a sermon written and a sermon spoken?
Yeah.
Have you learned, do you think, to write more spoken?
Yes.
That's bad English, but you know what I'm saying. So initially, maybe it was more like an essay.
Yes.
But you've learned to write in a way that you speak.
Yes, I do. Yes, very much. In terms of using shorter words, simpler words. Mm-hmm. For example, if I can choose between difficult and hard, I would say hard. Mm-hmm. Just because it's better to pronounce, right? And sometimes I don't trip on words. And have sentences which are short, which are direct. Sometimes I think it's helpful to do kind of imaginary dialogues in which maybe you put an objection in people's voice. Like, you may hear, but you might be thinking like, in my case, that wouldn't work. It wouldn't be clear. But I say this to you, and I get imaginary dialogue, or Jesus says this to us in a kind of paraphrase. That helps a lot. And the way I do it on the page, I don't write paragraphs. I wrote my preaching professor called it breath bites. So a part of the sentence in which a part, in the intention of a part, then a part. So when the eye goes, it grabs a lot the portion of the page, and you don't have to look at the page as often. If I had like a full sentence going one after the other, you're like, whoa, where am I? And you get lost, and that's a small thing that's helpful as well.
Because normal written stuff kind of does things by the way it's written, doesn't it?
Yes.
So you have little subheadings and bullet points, and you can't communicate that.
Yes.
So you've got to write in a way.
Yes, that's spoken. That's spoken. Yep.
So you prepare, you get to the point where you write it, then you run through it, then you preach it. Then how do you process it afterwards? As two things to that. One is the sort of feedback, evaluation, learning from your preaching. The other is the emotional, I'm depressed, Elijah stuff. Like, how do you kind of follow up a sermon?
Yeah, a good question. Appreciate it. I myself, just personal styles, like different styles, how we are. I don't use a lot of emotion in terms of, since the sermon is written, and I've practiced a few times, I kind of confident what I have. So I don't get, I feel that often when you go up emotionally a lot, that's when you go down, the body has to recover, right? So for me, it's not very stressful to preach. And so I don't feel the big letdown on Monday that maybe other preachers. And if you like, just have a few bullet points, and you're really thinking about what you're saying on Sunday at the moment, then it's more depending on you at the moment. So you get more tired at the end. So at least it doesn't happen as much to me. But then we just at home with Sarah, I asked her to not give it to me immediately afterwards. So it gives like compliments, points, that's helpful, they're good. And you have something to say, then we wait for the evening or the next day, and then you can receive better, right? It helps. Otherwise, I just preach, like, come on. Or meeting my co-pastor during the week, and then sometimes there are comments or things we have to still speak or address or receiving from people. So I try to do that. We don't have a very formal process. And I try to give it to the Lord, and the message is spoken. And one of the most freeing sentences I've ever heard was from Vaughan Roberts in the UK. He said, God uses bad sermons. And I love that. And he really uses bad sermons. Sometimes the ones you're most excited about, like they don't go much, they don't do much. But sometimes they say the most basic things. If I said before, people, that's just what I had to receive. And trust God's word, and God will use what he wants.
What about when you get the email, later in that evening, with just a list of issues? Do you ever get those? Maybe not.
Not so much for preaching, sometimes other areas of church. Yeah. Like, I don't know, pastoral care or discipleship or other things. I try to, then of course, you have not respond immediately. Process with other people. Then you do a version which like you're gonna, and then eventually when I meet that person, then I can say the things I have to say, but in a much more kinder and gracious way. And
don't do that version with their email address still.
No. It might be helpful to do a version like that to get the thing out of your body system, right? But then when you meet them, you're in a better shape. Right. But they do come. Yeah. And we have to understand it's part of the process. It's part of our own fine-tuning. Mm-hmm. It's part of how people sometimes express appreciation is by criticizing and staying engaged. That's how they feel it. Sometimes they're hard people. They do it with everybody, and you have just it's part of it. God uses over time.
How do you deal with the opposite when someone comes up and says something that is ridiculous? That's the greatest sermon I've ever heard. You must be almost close to Moses. You get the over-the-top praise. The students are really good at that, I think. I find that students sometimes can't quite figure out how to express what they're saying, so they over-express it.
Yes.
Which is great for your ego, but...
Yeah. I've seen it as an expression of maturity. The more mature we are, the more objective we are, and the more we can differentiate between the preacher and God, right? In the beginning, church and God and the pastor are kind of all as one thing. And so for them, I see them as a way of what they're really saying is like, I've been helped, I've been blessed, and I know that's coming from God just through me and through the church and my channel. So I kind of separate those things, and it helps. Remember one thing, a Sunday in which there were two people, young people, non-Christians. The guy said, gave me a compliment, said, "Oh, good job. Wasn't expecting, but you good." And then I said, "This guy, he didn't get it. It didn't arrive to him." And he's not a Christian to this day. Then there was a girl who said, "Rene, you wrecked me, and then you built me back up." And then I said, "Whoa!" The word got into her, like inside, right? And sometimes the more complimentary the compliments are, often they're expressed not like the word didn't go as deep, right? Because it goes deep, you think about yourself, you think about God, your sin and grace and Jesus, and not think about the preacher, right? Often. And that's when I feel like, that's when I feel most like, that's what I want to have, right? Yeah. When it's just about God, and you don't even forget about who was there, and that wasn't the point.
Right, and differentiating as well between immediate feedback and later feedback.
Yeah.
You know, if someone's shaking your hand because you just preached, they're probably being polite.
Yeah.
Right? But maybe they need to get past you to get to the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're going to say something.
Yeah.
But if someone comes to you, you know, 3 months later or a year later, hey, when you said that, God touched my heart.
Yeah. I know.
Those you want to keep. Right?
Yes. Or the message you received during the week from people like, I'm still think about the sermon. That's precious. Or just when you see life change over time, right? You think that's the most special thing about people taking steps, addressing things in their lives as a result of the things that they heard in the past. So that's I think the biggest compliment we can have. Yeah.
Do you ever watch yourself or listen to yourself?
Not much. It's kind of weird, right? And if it makes you self-conscious about yourself. Sometimes, but I just then there are people who edit the sermon, publish it online, and then I let it go and then think about the next one. And, often not. Yeah.
Maybe once is helpful.
Yes.
Or once a year or something.
Yes. Be mindful of some things. For example, how you use your hands, or how you some things that Sarah and other people have conveyed to me. Sometimes when I talk about something which is very sad, I can be joyous and smile. And that doesn't fit the thing. I said, oh yeah, that's true. I gotta be mindful of that. And even I write the page, I might write a sad face. Like it was when I was written about the emperors, what they're doing out in Judea, right? I wrote a sad face like right there. So, because it's not my style. But try to so the body, the face matches what you're talking about.
Right. So you've used a lot of historical background to talk about the emperors, right? So you kind of showed us coins and pictures of many holidays. Do you go on holiday for every sermon, or?
No, that'd be nice. No, we don't. It's just like I knew. Like this audience, it was sermons like similar to church, but here they were like richer, more things, right? I knew it was an audience of pastors, teachers, people in ministry, theologians. So I wanted to feed them, right? Yeah. And to have things like people discover new things, and the time you take in research, then they're both blessed people who are here, and they'll reproduce in their own discipleship sermons and things, right? So it had more than the usual things. Sure. But then what happened is that we wanted to go to Turkey. It was a thing we were planning. And then when ELF made the invitation, I thought of Revelation, said, oh, let's do this past Christmas. We went there and it was nice just for our own sake to visit the 7 churches and to have some things I could even, I could use here, things that we were just seeing a few months before. So they made us like pay attention to what we were visiting. And it was very nice,
Yeah, I'm not criticizing holidays, but the use of historical background, you think that actually, obviously there's more probably in messages here, but in an opposite extreme, in an evangelistic setting, do you see the value of helping people see that the Bible's historic is not myth?
Yes, I think so. I think it helps, right? Just seeing a coin, which is like a very concrete thing, is small, but it gives you a piece of that world. I think, the Bible was written in a specific time, a real world, not in once upon a time there was Jesus, right? Well, when the Augustus was a governor, Herod was the etc. I think it helps people see the Bible is a real book for the real world then and for real world now. So I think it does give some credibility in terms of showing some things, and know that also that you did your research. You're not like coming like this and
you're not just spontaneously saying stuff.
Yes.
Right. What have you found has really shaped you as a preacher? What have been the kind of influences or the advice or the seasons of life? What's kind of brought you from that first sermon back in the day to where you are now? And obviously there's more to come, but what's been helpful in shaping your preaching?
Yeah, thank you. I think I was very blessed to grow up in a good church, very good church, a Baptist church in São Paulo, Brazil, which was a church plant when I was born. My mom was already a Christian, my father was not. He became a Christian there. So I was born as the church was getting started. And of course, then in later years, in teenage years, I was very critical of it, etc. You have that spirit. But now I really appreciative of what I received, just in the inheritance. A good, solid preaching, a pastor who was very evangelistic himself, and people who poured into me, mentored me. There was a good foundation, right? Just what we receive in the early years. Then I really appreciate just people who model expository preaching and Christ-centered preaching. Who had a professor, the one who wrote the final book I suggested today. He was the one who got me engaged in Revelation. Show how Revelation is about Jesus, how he's very exalted, a vision of Jesus. And he was like a great guy, like a very godly man, great preacher. His sermons were real potent. And he was a big influence.
That was Darrell Johnson.
Darrell Johnson. Then John Stott, then Tim Keller, was a big influence on me. In my youth, I used to print. That was fun. The sermons of Edwards, Whitfield, Spurgeon, Wesley, and just read those sermons. That was powerful. Just have a sense of preaching from previous ages. That was very nice as well. And just have a sense of what preaching was like in previous ages, right? And now I try to listen. Often my podcast, I listen to interviews, different things, but have some sermons there as well. Just how the word is coming through in different contexts, through different personalities, different people. It's helpful. Even preachers of our own generation, sometimes trying to address the problems I'm trying to address in our own church. It helps to see people trying to do that and have the ideas. Preachers from different generations, like younger and older. It's good as well. It kind of enriches, right? And feeds us as well.
If you could go back in time and meet yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say just trust the word. It's less about us than we think. In the beginning, we think that it's a lot about us, right? Our delivery, our passion, what we say. But in the end, it's really like presenting God's word to people. That's what sticks. That's what makes a difference. It's not much about the illustrations and how we are. It's part of it at the beginning. We're insecure. We're trying to discover our voice, and it's part of it. We have to go through those journeys. Yeah. But in the end, the more like you think, trust the word, explain it, bring it to people, and give it to God, and it takes the pressures off, right? It's not about us, not about me, and it's about the word, about the Spirit, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word, and so yeah.
Are there parts of the Bible you enjoy preaching, not more than others, but kind of more than others?
I see.
There's
yeah.
some you kind of
you
enjoy going to.
I wouldn't say I enjoy, but I think at least in my case, it works better are narratives. If you have a story, then it's nice. Then it's I can go the tension points of the story and help people identify, and then usually there are stronger sermons than if I have, I don't know, an epistle or something which are more concepts to be explained. At least in my case, it works better for me. I enjoy it more, and it's stronger. Yeah.
Have you ever preached from a book of the Bible that you were not looking forward to, and then discovered that you really enjoyed it?
Yes. Oh, this take place. Yeah. Often, I don't know. Often in the beginning, I think the word comes alive to you yourself, right? You're the one who most receives what is there. And just the word becomes alive. God uses that book to speak to you, what you're living through. I don't know, Ezra, or which kind of series we did. Even Revelation, right? You think like, what's there, right? All those things, and there's a lot, and you receive a lot. And I think it's our own process of even preaching as a spiritual discipline. I feel that on Sunday is kind of the gospel comes to me and through me and to the people, and that kind of washes you with the gospel again. And it's special. It's nice to receive that for our own sakes, right? For other people as well, but for ourselves to receive the gospel again, and you have to live it out. You have to apply that to your own heart, and that helps a lot.
Do you, in your church, do you try to develop other preachers?
Yes.
How do you do that?
Yes, I try to identify and develop both in terms of to have have variety. I think that it's better to receive from a few people than just from one person. So I preach about 60 to 65% of the time. Then my associate pastor preaches about once every month and a half or so. And then we have some other people from the congregation's elders or leaders who can preach as well. And I invite also people from other congregations, from like Andy, who is in Rome, or other people. It's nice to receive from other traditions, other voices, preachers from other cultures. If I have someone visiting Rome, I know, for example, in July there will be Lars, when he was here, and he said, "Oh, come to preach at our church." He's Norwegian, so it's nice to receive from other people as well. Or Lindsay preach at our church, so it enriches, right? So I try to both have a preaching team, though also I've noticed in the past I was too quick, maybe in some cases, to open the pulpits, and people were not ready. And it wasn't helpful for their own journey in terms of knowing how to handle that. And sometimes things go to the mind and to the heart in a way which is not beneficial. So also be mindful of that, especially like in church plants, where you need help. You want to develop people, you want to believe in people. In some cases, I did it too early, and would have rather waited. So I'm trying to be more careful now and see the pulpit also as a development opportunity, but also in a prudent way. Yeah.
As you're heading away from ELF, what are you kind of heading back into? Is it all church, or is it another thing coming, or is it summer, more relaxed? Like, what does the next season look like for you?
Yes. On the one hand, it will be church. We just had a church retreat, which was very nice. So the church is in a good state in terms of spending a long weekend together. So we're doing this series of Faith in Modernity. We're doing a series on the prophets in late June and July.
How are you doing that? Some of us have been in the prophets this week. So
yes.
Tell us about that one.
This one we're doing not a book itself. We're calling kind of the life of a prophet, and having individual messages. And here I'm having some chances for people who haven't maybe preached before or don't preach often to preach. And so you can pick, for example, to speak about Elijah or about Jonah or something in which I find that in that case it works better for people than to have a specific passage in the middle of a book in which someone preaching for the first time, it would be more overwhelming, right? And so we're doing that. So I'm doing a few sermons, having other people, more space in the summer for more people to preach.
Okay.
And then August we do, like in the family vacation, we in our case in Rome, the city really gets empty during the summer. So we do online services, and people who are in Rome meet and watch the service and have fellowship, have dinner together. And so we found a way to give our team a break, and also to serve people where they are. So we created this own tradition. So we're doing that in August.
But you're on vacation in August?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sermon research, right?
Yes, not in August, though. In June there'll be a conference I'll go in Athens, and our kids have been wanting to go to Greece. So anyway, we'll go the four of us, and one day we'll go visit like the Acropolis, and we took a day off to visit Corinth. We haven't been to Corinth, so it'll be some research. It's fun as a family to go there.
Did that last September.
Oh, good.
Family vacation. I was trying to figure out, can I justify this as a tax exemption?
Yeah.
So how can we pray for you and for Sarah, the family? What would be your prayer requests?
Yes, appreciate it. I think our kids are now 12 and 14, and so we're kind of trying to be mindful of that stage and kind of readjusting, right, to them as the new stage in which like the friends have become very important. Our relationship with them changes a bit. Sometimes they're more attached to me or to her, and be mindful of that, I think, once. Another thing is just like balancing our ministries, because Sarah leads a very big ministry with travel, and so trying to balance things and make sure we're solid at home. And I'll say, even for this church plant that is taking on, is going very well in this town, and also the effect it has on us as a mother church, even though the church is not old, it's 12 years old, it kind of refreshes, right? It's kind of having a child. And people, like, we're trying to take people to go visit there, and they see the new people coming, the non-Christian coming there. Their eyes start to sparkle anew, and what we could do those things in Rome again. And so even for the renewal of our church through this church planting project.